Hello everyone and welcome to another Total War Warhammer online commentary. In this battle I'm going to be playing the Empire led by the Toadbringer himself. And guys, we're going to be facing off against Bretonnia, who does appear to have 2 Knights of the Realm and 2 Pegasus Knights, so we're definitely in for a wild time. So let's jump right into this game and take a look at the army compositions. So for my front line, I have a very heavy core of state troops, or swordsmen as I should call them. And swordsmen I feel like are pretty underrated in a lot of matchups. They actually have some decent combat stats. These ones actually do have 4 or 3 chevrons put into them, so their stats aren't necessarily accurate, but they do have a base of 32 and 32 in terms of their melee attack and melee defense with the unchevron version, which I think is not bad. And against Bretonnia, there's a multitude of different diverse army compositions Bretonnia can bring. They can go just pure infantry with, battle pilgrims and grail reliquaries and just, try and brute force you that way, but they can also bring a ton of peasant bowmen, which can be really withering against like flagellant front lines. So in order to kind of counteract that, I brought in a ton of swordsmen, and they honestly, their stats aren't that much worse than like a battle pilgrim. So battle pilgrims have let's see, so 40 melee attack, 28 melee defense, and then also 35 weapon strength. So they do have better stats and of course better leadership, but the swordsmen are just I think they're a little bit cheaper. Battle pilgrims cost like 600 give or take, and these guys I think are like 200 less. They're pretty darn cheap, like 475 or something, but swordsmen, I definitely like them as a front line, and really with the Empire in almost every matchup, you're not going to be winning that infantry fight in the front, so you just want something cheap and relatively durable, whether it's flagellants or swordsmen, and then you win the fight with your back line. So the crossbows, crossbows, I was trying something a little bit more experimental. I do think the powder units of the Empire are very good. Silver bullets, Sterling Tree Company, and even regular handgunners might be better in this matchup, but I was just kind of experimenting with a bit of a different build. I wanted to see if these crossbowmen could, take out as peasant bowmen and wither down as battle pilgrims and kind of, change the tide of the game for me, but it was definitely a bold strategy, Cotton. On top of that, in the back, I do have the Sterling's Revenge, which I'm going to be using as a possum unit. So I like to keep them here hidden, and then when my opponent dives on my crossbows, I can gun them down horribly with the Sterling's Revenge. On top of that, I do have the silver bullets over here, which are obviously just a must bring in almost every matchup. In the back, I actually decided to bring Lore of Fire, and obviously Lore of Life and several of the other lores are more competitive, but I just like trying out these different builds and experimenting with these other lores of magic. So I do have the Flamestorm, Flaming Sword of Ruin, which gives 22% weapon damage or missile damage, and then I also do have the Cascading Fire Cloak, which is an excellent duelist ability. So if my lord is dueling the enemy lord and getting a little bit crazy, I can use the Cascading Fire Cloak to buff him and kind of change the tide of that battle, because it does give him armor-piercing damage, and Boris Todbringer, when he's not on the Imperial Griffin, doesn't have the best AP value. So in a lord duelist situation, especially against an enemy lord that is on a flying armor-piercing mount, it's going to be very helpful. I do have the Royal Altar of Griffites over here, which are just an awesome unit. They cause fear and terror. Very good anti-cav, anti-monsters unit. Hammer the Witches over here, as well as some spears in the back line. So that's pretty much it for my army, guys. So my opponent is actually lurking over here. He's got some Pegasus Knights, and there was actually something that happens here in a moment I wanted to show you guys. I got a 2-for-1. Like a cannonball comes through here and clips both of these. But for my opponent, he's got a symmetrical flank. So he's got the Royal Pegasus Knights, Knights of the Realm, and the same thing on the far side, which is going to be pretty tough to deal with, to be honest, because I kind of had a build that was, just accounting for 1 or 2 cav units, but when he brought 4, it's going to be a lot of work defending my back line. I have a couple spears in the Royal Altar of Griffites, but that's a lot of pressure coming in. For his infantry core, he has a combination of here it is, guys. I wanted to show you. So check this out. So it comes in here, and I hadn't seen this in a while. So it actually takes out that Pegasus Knight. And then it comes through here and like kills like 2 Knights of the Realm, I think, or actually 3. So that was a pretty gangster shot right there. But anyways, for his infantry corps, he has a combination of Foot Squires, the Holy Wardens, which are just an outstanding unit. Probably one of the best regiments of renown on the Bretonnian roster. These guys have 50 plus melee attack, flame and magic damage, so good utility there against Norska and against ethereal units. They also do have weapon strength that's pretty high. Well, I already mentioned that. And their melee defense isn't bad for like a berserker type unit. Aside from that, he does have men-at-arms with polearms on both flanks. He does have Lore of Life, and I'm not sure if he has the Dweller's Blow. I think he was taking a little bit easy on me here, and he just has the standard Earthblood. So, that's one of the things about Bretonnia. One of the reasons they're so strong is because their infantry corps are just so safe. Like, in almost every single matchup you play, if you just mix Foot Squires and Battle Pilgrims across the front line, you're going to have an answer for everything. And even Foot Squires, like against non-armored infantry, they do well because they do have that anti-infantry bonus of +8. So the Bretonnian infantry corps is definitely one of the best in the game, in my opinion. So without further ado, guys, let's roll right into this battle. So my opponent is going to be advancing here. You can see the Holy Wardens are going to be going in here, and what I'm going to be doing is using my crossbowmen just to shut down his peasant fire. So he was probably expecting some powder units, and the peasant bowmen usually trade very well with powder units because of their arc of fire. But in this situation with my 3 crossbows, I'm really going to be able to shut those guys down. So you can see here the Hammer, the Witches continuing to just like deck these Pegasus Knights. It's so darn accurate, and it just keeps shooting in here. And by the time they get here, they're going to be down quite a few models, probably be at like 60, maybe 70% HP. And here's another one right here, just takes out another 2. So they're down to like, let's see how many models they're on now. Yeah, 13, which is pretty bad. On the far side, my opponent does come in. He didn't actually see these silver bullets. Of course, they are hidden, as you guys know. They don't have stock. So he comes in here and takes a full volley, takes about 10, 12% of his HP in damage. And also in the front, his peasants here are taking a ton of crossbow fire, and it's going to be very, very devastating because peasants only have 15 armor. They're incredibly squishy, and you can see that the state troops are going to be advancing against the foul Bretonians here. So in the front, it's going to be pretty bad. The Bretonian infantry corps is definitely of better quality than me. Right now you can see some of my swordsmen being instantly decapitated or having their head smashed in by some of these hammers, so it's definitely very unfavorable for me here. These peasants in the back, though, this is a winning battle for me. His peasant bowmen are at 59 models. My guys are pretty much have taken no damage, so that's going very well. I am casting a Flaming Sword of Ruin in the front line to try and help out, but my opponent does land right here. So this is what I was talking about playing possum with the Sterling's Revenge. So these guys thought they were safe. They thought they were having, getting into the chicken coop a little bit, but then I get a full volley here, and I'll probably get 2 volleys. So they get smashed by the silver bullets, and the Demogryph Knights are going to come in from the rear. The Royal Altdorf Griffites are just going to crush these guys. So the Royal Altdorf Griffites, even though Pegasus Knights are kind of anti-specialist or anti-large specialists, these guys are the true original, anti-large specialists, and they're just going to have an absolute field day on some of these Royal Pegasus Knights. So these guys get cut up pretty good here, and things are looking pretty good for me in the back line. Granted, I have been compromised a little bit over here. My crossbowmen have been engaged on by some of those Royal Pegasus Knights. He does have his Lord over here as well, so I'm not able to fully defend my flank, and that was kind of one of my big concerns, although you can see the Hammer of the Witches, man, just took out like 4 of those guys in one volley. So just incredibly powerful, and things are going pretty well here. So the silver bullets have been engaged on by the Bretonnian Lord, and he's kind of just diving through the ranks and having a bit of a field day. Man, just look at that splash damage, it's huge. So I had my spears screening these Knights of the Realm, and as you guys can see, I didn't really have enough tools to defend my entire back line. So I was kind of having to play catch up a little bit. Thankfully, my Sterling's Revenge were able to get back online and are shooting at some of these lords over here, which is which is good. And the Royal Altdorf Griffites are just trying to find a home, so I'm not really quite sure where I want to land. And he does have a whole other group of Knights of the Realm in the back, so we're getting a little bit of a charge right here. And this will heavily favor the Demogryph Knights because Knights of the Realm don't have the best armor-piercing values. They have, for their cost and, for their purpose, they're very good, but these guys, like I mentioned, are just pure specialists in this situation. 125 armor is very heavy, so you can see they take, maybe 7 or 8% of their damage, and these guys have already taken, a good 25%, and it's just going to rapidly decline what their health is from there. So things are pretty good in the back line. Granted, there's a lot of tough situations in the front. You can see he completely collapsed my state troops. They're fleeing off the battlefield. He does have some halberds and some foot squires coming in here, and he's also using his Knights of the Realm very efficiently to kind of clean up my front line and kind of ramrod my Sigmar sons here in the front. But, his Pegasus Knights and really expensive units have been taken out. The bounce of power is still pretty even. But in the back, this Lord is still just getting all up in my silver bullets, which is really tough. And over here, my Demogryph Knights, I just really wanted to secure that Hammer of the Witches. I knew it was going to be really, really essential to win. And I'm having to use my Spearmen to engage his Men-at-Arms here, which is just going to be just a pretty sad little fight. But nonetheless, if I can hold that Hammer of the Witches and just keep it firing on some of his really high-value targets, like his Lord and other guys like that, I think I should be able to pull it out. So you can see the bounce power right now is pretty even. I have a very scary goon squad. Even though my infantry corps is extremely tattered, if we look up above, I don't really have any swordsmen left. I have this very scary squad of the Royal Demogryph Knights, or the Royal Altdorf Griffites, as well as my Lord, Boris Todbringer, and some guns still in line here. And man, we're able to just catch this Bretonnian Lord and just absolutely punish him. So I collapse on him with some spears, and I knew he was about to get away, so I pull my Royal Altdorf Griffites, and I'm just trying to secure as many of the guns and different things that I still have left. It's a very, very dicey situation. But nonetheless, I think I should be able to do it. This core is going to be incredibly tough to crack. He has more density than I do, but he doesn't have that kind of real stopping power that I still have left. So right now, my Sterling's Free Company Militia are having to run from some of these foot squires, and I think they are faster, so 28 to 35. So I should be able to get away and kite him there. Over here, my crossbowmen are being compromised, being engaged on by some Men-at-Arms, but I do have some spears coming over to help out a little bit, which is going to be nice. And, just by keeping all my missiles alive, I'm able to keep pressuring his Lord, and you can see the bounce of power is, now starting to finally shift a little bit. My Royal Altdorf Griffites are going to be chasing down some of these foot squires right here, which is pretty rough. And this, I remember when the Total War Warhammer, trailer first came out for the Empire, and it had, the one with Karl Franz and then Giant and the Bright Wizard. Well, not Bright Wizard, I think it was a Celestial Wizard. And it had the Royal, or the Griffin, or Demogryph Knights, excuse me, coming out of the woods and charging down that Giant. That scene was so freaking cool, and these guys are definitely doing that trailer justice. But they're still at 18 models, pretty much perfect health, and they're able to shatter those, well, not shatter, but break those foot squires pretty efficiently. On the far side, unfortunately, my Hammer of the Witches has been shut down, so the Bretonnian peasants have gotten there. My spears try to defend it, but he also has a damsel over here, so I really didn't have the resources to, defend my back line there. I did have some swordsmen come back in. They do have 42 kills, which honestly isn't bad against like battle pilgrims and foot squires. And you can see my opponent, his missile troops, he did regroup them and has them back online, so he's going to be teeing off on these guys over here. But his lord is in pretty bad shape, although he still did get back into my my free company over here, which is pretty tough. But I was able to push off these royal pegs. Well, they're not even royal; it's actually just Pegasus Knights. But I was able to push them off, and the Royal Altar of Griffites are going to come in and try and rescue these guys. And the thing is, if he runs from these guys, he's going to take fire, which is good. So things are looking up in the world. But still, I'm having a lot of trouble keeping up with all of his like mobile threats here. And you can see he just gets in here and just lances down some of my crossbowmen. But the crossbowmen already did their job. They kind of routed off a lot of his infantry and. At the very least, I guess they were like a magnet of sorts. They were able to kind of distract a lot of his units and allow my Demogryph Knights, to not take the brunt of the charge. So, the free company here are in pretty good shape. And where's his lord? So yeah, he's just jumping all over the battlefield, just kind of trolling me from a multitude of different angles. You can see his peasant firing line is back online, and it's actually shooting at some of my crossbowmen over here who are down to 21 models. So that's pretty rough, and they're going to break off right there. Boris Todbringer did come back here because I figured the Hammer of the Witches crew was still kind of nearby somewhere, but I think they actually got completely killed. Like, I can't even see their crew routing off the battlefield. But Boris is in good shape. He still has his Rune Fang. Well, not still. It's actually perpetual, so it wouldn't matter. But he's able to charge in there and take out some of those Holy Wardens, but he is surrounded, and the enemy lord here does have that good armor-piercing value, so it's going to be a little bit tough for him. You can see he takes a little bit of damage, but nothing he can't come back from. So my spearmen are also routed off, so this was a little bit of a scary situation, even though the bounce of power was so heavily in my favor. Getting Boris isolated like this was definitely not fun, but honestly, even if I lost Boris, like these Royal Altar of Griffites and these Stirland's company militia over here, yeah, you can see his lord's is essentially shattered right now, and he's just going to get gunned down. So he just didn't have like the unit quality left to keep his army fighting. So well played to my opponent. It was a super fun game. I mean, the build worked out okay. What I would probably do is cut a group of crossbowmen and get 2 more spears. Honestly, I think that would have been fine, because if I had 2 extra groups of spears on my flanks, being able to kind of mitigate some of that Knight of the Realm pressure and all that kind of stuff, I think I would have been a much smoother fight for me. But nonetheless, it was a pretty fun build. Boris did well. The Royal Altar of Griffites were all over the place, just kind of roving the battlefield and really taking out those high value targets. But my opponent, I liked his army. He didn't, the Dweller's Blow obviously would have been amazing. He could have baited my Royal Altar of Griffites into something and then just simply dwelled them down, and it would have been a much tougher game for sure. But it was, I was using Lure of Fire, so maybe he could sense I was using Lure of Fire and took it easy on me there. But definitely cool. I like his army, honestly. The front line was good. The men-at-arms in the back to protect against my flanking was fine. The Pegasus Knights, like 2 of them, I think is a little bit of excessive. If he had cut the 1 Pegasus Knight and then brought like several more groups of battle pilgrims, it would have been incredibly hard to protect them from coming up and around my flanks, and I think my backline would have been pretty heavily compromised. But very well played to my opponent, Aldrodri 28. Look forward to seeing you again on ladder, and hopefully you guys enjoyed that Empire vs. Bretonnia game. Have an excellent night and take care.